All right, welcome to another episode of Scotty Talks Philly Sports. I'm on live with my buddy Phil Stifle from All the Birds. You guys know him on Twitter as Beard of Knowledge. You can also find me on Twitter at Scotty Drowned, my personal page. And then, of course, the sports page at ST Philly Sports 1. That's all scrolling there at the bottom for you. Make sure to go give us a follow. Make sure to go give All About the Birds a follow, AAT Birds on Twitter and Instagram. You can also find them on Facebook. Be sure to check out the Heat Ratio sports page, man. Give that a follow. Check out the podcast. We're partnered up with them. Tony Cotillo and, Jigsaw over there handing out judgments. Be sure to give them a follow, man.
One of the top Carson haters out there.
Hell yeah. Hey, man, we're all getting there, but, I'm not fully off the Carson wagon just yet.
I just got to give him a little hard time. That's all,
Yeah, exactly.
Tony's good in my book. I just got to give him as much of a hard time as I can.
Exactly, man. But we're just going to discuss, the Eagles Green Bay matchup. And then, of course, we'll dive into a little bit around the NFL, fantasy football, and any questions that we got coming through the comments there. But yeah, man, it's where we are at with Carson, right? My buddy sent me a text this morning. It was a link to rallyhouse.com.
Is that legit?
They're selling Carson Wentz jerseys for $40 and $50 a pop, like the real ones.
I wasn't sure.
Jersey.
I wasn't sure when I first saw that if that was a legit or a Photoshop. I wasn't sure because I can't imagine them doing that already. It's got to be it's got to be a total just a way for them to drum up like some kind of controversy and stuff.
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
something because it was literally just his jersey. I mean, even Jalen Mills was still $100 jersey. But they did have the Malcolm Jenkins. I did grab that one just, to keep for the collection. I never had a Malcolm jersey, but they had that one for $50. That wasn't bad. But I guess we can just dive right in, to the Eagles matchup with the Packers. Obviously we're at a tough point here, 3-7-1. Hard to have any, confidence. And it's hard to, say that we're going to go out here and beat a 8-3 or 9-2 Packers team. 8-3, I think they are.
Yeah.
It's hard to say that. I mean, as with every matchup, there's ways we can win. There's always a way. Obviously, we know, the Russian defense isn't like that. They give up the most receiving yards to running backs as well. So we'll kind of just go over that. I honestly just wanted to go over. I saw you mention on All About the Birds, we no longer have keys to victory, Phil. We just have keys to have some type of excitement or success. And that's kind of what we want to go over here to start off and, just see, how you guys are feeling, how I'm going to see how Phil's feeling going into this game. How are we feeling? What do we need to do? What can we do?
You're asking me because I mean, there's not much we can do. You know what I mean? Look, the keys to the game. I want to see positivity. I want to see growth. I want to see win or lose that. Whether the play calling gets better, whether Carson, it doesn't show that lack of confidence in himself that he has. I want to see the positivity or the growth in the run game in some of the young guys. We cut Will Parks, and that brought up a lot of people were trashing that move. But if it opens up room for Kayvon Wallace, I want to see that kind of positive growth, and that's the key that I'm looking for. If we win, great. If we don't, it's just what we expect at this point this season.
Right.
Go through this game and see some positive growth moving forward for the rest of this year to next year to know what we have in some of these players, then I call that a win in my book, even if we lose.
Yeah, no. And you can't put it more straightforward than that. At this point, we're not looking at contending. There's no point in, these veterans getting snaps over these young guys. I mean, the Will Parks thing, I liked Will Parks. I think part of the controversy was just that he was a Philly guy.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't like to see, him not even finish out the season in his first year coming back home. But, it's at the end of the day, I mean, he chose the Broncos, but I mean, he had an opportunity. He could go out. Well, I guess they put a waiver claim in for him, so he didn't necessarily choose. But, at the end of the day, it gave an opportunity for him to have a chance at maybe making the playoffs and doing something if, maybe made it through waivers. But that's whatever. I mean, he's a veteran guy.
Honestly, everybody's all upset. And even the whole fact that, Kayvon Wallace is going to get more snaps or whatever the coaching staff is spinning the story-wise.
Right.
He only played 10 snaps last week, Will Parks. So it's not like it's opening up this huge, it wasn't like he was a starter playing 60, 70, snaps a game. You know what I mean? He was a backup to begin with. So it's not that big of a deal. And again, it's only opening up 10 snaps. Marcus Epps had 3 snaps last week. Kayvon Wallace, none. So now you've got 13 total snaps to give Epps and Kayvon Wallace. So, it's not like you're going to get this huge sample size unless they make even more drastic changes to their rotation.
Right, exactly. And, I guess we'll kind of we'll take that point and gravitate, towards Alshon and kind of how that's affected, I don't know if that's directly affecting, Travis Fulgham. It seems like it's more affected, I guess, John Hightower the last couple of weeks. It's taken all his snaps away, really. John Hightower, I thought it was funny because Johnny Uleka pointed this out when I had him on here once. And, you notice since John Hightower has been out of the game plan, we have not had a single – and I know he dropped a couple deep balls, but we have not had a single bomb since he's been gone. And he seemed like the only one that was – getting open down the field. And I know we love Rieger, and whether it's us game planning, it's not going great right now. It's not going terrible, obviously. I mean, we're trying to get him involved. You saw some of the screens last week, trying to get him in space. But you just got to be, more. I hate to say it, even more creative. I mean, you got to keep trying new stuff, and you can't just keep flipping out the same plays. But the Alshon thing, I can't put him in there. I mean, he has 2 catches.
Two catches. What's he making? $15 million a year this year, or something like that? Some astronomical number. It's a lot of money for 2 catches. But there's 2 different things you hit there. You hit the Alshon point, but you're also hitting on the deep ball threat point.
Yeah.
So 2 different things there. Alshon, I mean, obviously, he's taking away from Hightower, but he is also taking away from Fulgham to an extent because Carson, whether there's really an issue between Carson and Alshon last year, we don't really know if it was really Alshon with those leaks or not. But Carson is confident throwing towards Alshon, just like he's confident throwing to Zach Ertz, just like he's confident throwing to Greg Ward. So if it makes Carson more comfortable in the pocket, I mean, you kind of have to. And, Travis Fulgham, he had a great 4-game stretch there. But even the last game before Alshon came back, it wasn't like Fulgham was like – he kind of came down to earth a little bit. There's some game tape on him. So, defenses knew what to do to stop him. Now it's up to Travis Fulgham to readjust and, make those adjustments on his own, if he's going to take that next step and everything. So with the deep threat, but also Alshon out there, one of my followers on Twitter, I forget, I didn't write it down, reminded me of something that I've said all offseason. I said it, is that what did we really do to improve the wide receiver core on this team? We brought Marcus Goodwin, who was always hurt, and he opted out. We brought back Alshon and Djax, 2 aging vets that are always hurt. We drafted Jalen Reagor, but outside of Jalen Reagor, we drafted Hightower and Watkins, 5th, 6th round picks. The fact that people expect it because of 1 or 2 clips from training camp, these huge seasons from 5th and 6th round draft picks in their rookie year. So this team set Carson up to have to rely on someone like Alshon Jeffries because what did we really do to improve this team?
Yeah.
In the wide receiver? We didn't really. Hightower dropped those deep balls, but, he's a 5th round rookie.
Right.
With no training camp or OTAs or, real preseason games. So there's a lot being put on a 5th round rookie. And I think they're unfair expectations for him. And yes, without him running out there, those deep passes, we have no deep threat right now. but that comes down to the front office of building a poor wide receiver group to begin with.
Exactly. And
I think they're all linked together there, all those subjects and all.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And I think that's a perfect point about John Hightower. Most teams don't come into a season, so excited about a 5th round pick, like looking at training camp, like really looking for John Hightower out there. I mean, it shouldn't have been that in the first place. And, that, like you said, that's not somebody you want to rely on. And, I thought it was interesting. I've gotten into arguments on Twitter about the same subject, people telling me, how he tried to address the wide receiver position. So I don't know why we're killing him just because they're injured. You relied on Deshaun Jackson, who's past his prime. He's always injured. You relied on Alshon Jeffrey, always injured. You relied on Marquise Goodwin, who not only is really not that good, he's also always injured. And then
he's actually more injury prone than Deshaun Jackson or Alshon Jeffrey.
Exactly.
If you really look at it, he's not that big of a deal.
So, I mean, it was addressed incorrectly. So it's just as bad as not addressing it. You look at guys like Robbie Anderson out there, who's at the top of the league right now with receiving yards. I know he's probably dropped down a little bit the last couple of weeks. He's been a little slump, but he would have been well worth the money that he got in free agency for us. And he's from, Temple, so it made sense.
If you look at the money spent on Javon Hargrave on the defensive side, you could have gotten Robbie Anderson for less than that, put us in less of a cap hole next year. And Javon Hargrave obviously hasn't fit into our defensive scheme. And you could have had Robbie Anderson out there instead.
Yeah.
Wouldn't Robbie Anderson on this team right now look a lot? And that's just one guy we're talking about. There are other options out there. But just looking at him, what did he get? Like $10 million a year or something like that? Javon Hargrave's making like 15, 20. I mean, that's a big difference right there.
And you can't, and I know fans will say whatever they want, about, the DeAndre Hopkins trade and the Stephon Diggs trade. If you look at those trades right now, those trades worked out. I mean, those quarterbacks are thriving. They have a number 1 wide receiver, for the next couple years. It's not just this year. I mean, these guys are, DeAndre Hopkins, he's a little up there, but he's still, right in the middle of his prime. And then, of course, Stephon Diggs, he's had, sort of I wouldn't call it an outbreak in Buffalo, but he's just shown that he can be the one.
Hopkins is only 28 years old. I just looked it up. So he's not even close to, getting up there yet.
But, so I just have like a couple keys today, if Eagles want to give themselves a chance to win. Obviously, we said it at the beginning of the show, run the damn football. I mean, it doesn't make sense, man. I'm not even just running the football, but the utilization of Miles Sanders. I know he's dropped a couple passes as well the last couple weeks, which, obviously that's not a good look when you're a fan wanting him to, be involved more. Obviously the coaches will lean away from him. But, we get Jordan Howard back today. We elevated him from the practice squad. He went off against the Packers last year. So, we need to run the football, obviously. We need to make some plays on defense. I thought last week, we played really good, I thought, against Russell Wilson, an MVP candidate. You got another one coming right up here, and Aaron Rodgers, who might even be playing better right now. And, Davante Adams, another just monster of a receiver. Similar to DK. I mean, I know DK is a freak athlete, but Davante Adams is huge as well. So, Darius Slay, I thought Slay, everybody was saying how he got, clowned or cooked last week. I thought he played really good coverage. DK Metcalf is just a monster. And the only thing that you can hope is that Darius Slay can play that same coverage today against Davante Adams, except get to the ball before the wide receiver. DK did a very good job of hiding when the ball was coming. So Darius Slay was left clueless on when that ball was arriving most of those times. And he was right there to make the tackle right after the catch most of those times as well. So it'll be interesting for the D, but overall they need to make some plays. They need to get some pressure on Aaron Rodgers. Maybe force some turnovers. I know he only has 4 interceptions on the year, so good luck. But compared to our interception rate, I mean, it's hard to ask for that. But and then the final point, obviously we've been, begging for it. If you run the football properly today, you should be able to get Carson Wentz out of the pocket properly today. You can do play action, you can do rollouts. So these got to be the keys, getting the ball out of Carson's hands quick, easy decisions. We've been talking about this all year. You know what I mean?
Where did the run the ball go? Where did it go? Last year against Green Bay, we had 27. We won the game. What was it? 34 to 27.
Yeah.
We had 27 passes to 27 rushes with our running backs, and then 6 more rushes, whether they were designed or not, with Carson.
Exactly.
And we won because we've got a top-tier running back. We had a great second running back in Howard last year. We had Carson healthy and confident. Obviously it's a game plan that works, but what's the reasoning behind the game plan change or the fact that they won't adjust back to what obviously worked?
I don't understand it because, that's a good point. I mean, the Eagles were playing their best football last season down the stretch. Obviously, against the Packers, they did run the ball very well. And I think at that point, with that Buffalo game in there as well, where Miles broke off the big run, I think at that point, Eagles fans had conceded, okay, Carson, while we think he's this elite quarterback, just like every other quarterback, he plays at a higher level when the run game is going, just like every other quarterback. I mean, you look at the the San Francisco 49ers, they ran the ball or they passed the ball 8 times in that NFC Championship game. I mean, you're doing your quarterback favors when you run the football. And in a quarterback that's in such a tough position like Carson is right now, he's obviously struggling mentally. He's getting beat up physically. Cut him a break. Run the football 30 times. I mean, give Miles 20 carries one time for us. And, and this is the other point that I'm going to bring up with Miles Sanders. I talked about it on Twitter last night. I was doing some, just digging up stats, trying to see what's going on. And you just look at Miles Sanders receiving, involvement in the pass game last year compared to this season. And it's 5-1. I mean, he had 500 receiving yards, total season, obviously, but he's only projected to get 179 yards receiving on the whole season. And I just don't understand where how did that change so much from the end of last season where, you found your groove? Obviously, it was Boston Scott, Miles Sanders, and Jordan Howard at the end of the season last year with Carson Wentz just making the plays in between. And to your point, I don't know where it went. I don't know why it's not brought back.
See, and here's the confusing part. I understand actually to an extent why the screen game or the passes to Miles Sanders aren't working, but it's also the same reason why that I'm confused why we're not running the ball. It's the offensive line. Last year at this point in the season, we had JP, we had Lane Johnson, we had Brandon Brooks. We had an all-pro offensive line.
Right.
This year, we've got Jordan. We're going to have our 11th different offensive line starting, 5 today. There's only one guy that's played every single game, and that's Jason Kelce this year at the same spot. So, this young line, learning how to block for a screen game and swing out and get it all set up, it does take time. And when you've got an inexperienced line like Jordan Mailata or Jack Driscoll's going to be starting today, Pryor, who's had an awful season, Opeta, all the different names we've seen out there this year.
Yeah.
The blocking for the screen game, I can understand where there's an issue there. That comes back on Jeff Stoutland, the greatest coach supposedly, who actually isn't doing as great of a job as people think this year. But the one thing he has gotten all these guys ready to do is run block. Jordan Mailata is a beast in the run blocking game. Okay? Isaac Seumalo, back now. He can block the run, but we're not doing it. You're asking these young, inexperienced guys to pass block. They're missing their, protections. Don't. Just hand the ball off and tell them to plow forward. They're opening the holes up for Miles. So where I understand the one end of the equation, I don't understand the other end of that equation. You're geared to run the ball right now. Your line is geared to run, and they're not doing it.
Yeah, and to your point, once again, you're not helping your quarterback. You're not helping your beat-up offensive line. Who are you helping? I mean, I don't get it. And, the defense – Like we said, the defense played well last week. It takes so long for this offense to get going. It's like we go through the same thing every week with the slow starts. And then somehow, I don't know if it's just garbage time or if it's, Carson, if Doug gets in a rhythm halfway through the game. Interesting point, which is going to be my next talking point. I wanted to actually bring this up. Press Taylor. Doug's talking about, giving the play call in some of the duties to Press Taylor.
He did already?
Yeah, apparently he called the plays the entire second half against the Seahawks. So I don't, if I could blame anyone directly for Carson, other than Carson, obviously, it would probably be Press Taylor. Maybe Doug is thinking in the idea of, Press Taylor knows Carson the best. He's with Carson in the QB room. Maybe he knows what Carson will be comfortable doing. My only concern there is, does the running the football increase or decrease with Press Taylor being?
Well, obviously didn't increase in the last game.
Right, it did. It
did. Press Taylor. I was looking him up because obviously I know who he is, but I don't really know his his background. And I was looking at it. He's actually a holdover from the Chip Kelly era here, which I was actually surprised. I didn't realize he was here that long ago. But if you look at his resume, he was an assistant coach at the University of Tulsa for a little while before coming here. It wasn't like he had this huge resume of success. And we're going to put our play calling, duties to a guy that has no experience really, who, if anything, has helped Carson regress versus progress in his career. It doesn't make any sense to me.
And I think that's a good point by Adam there. You always talk about this, Phil.
They did it 3 drives in a row last game, and it worked in 3 straight drives. One ended in that interception with that was meant to go to Dallas Goedert, but they had 3 positive drives while running the up-tempo.
Yeah, and it just – it's like they see something working and then they just go away from it, deliberately. It doesn't – it makes it it's so annoying to watch.
Does it go towards that hole? And I know this is a terrible rumor, and no one would ever do this, but the terrible rumor that Doug Peterson wants to get fired? I don't know. They say maybe he is trying to purposely screw everything up because he wants out,
and apparently, in Q&E podcast comments in there, they're kind of, gearing towards what we're headed towards talking about here. Doug saying he doesn't care. Not that he doesn't care. He would.
There's only 32 head coaching jobs in this league. You got one. You want to hold on to it no matter what.
Yeah.
There's no guarantee you get another job anytime soon. But on the flip side, it seems like he's purposely screwing up as much as he can.
It does. Because you can't be that incompetent, right?
No. You have to see what works.
But to answer their question, if it was up to me, if Doug wants to be in Philly, if that rumor isn't necessarily true, I would keep Doug. He is a guy that can rally the players. I would get him an OC, and ultimately I would fire Howie first. I think Howie is the biggest criminal in Philadelphia right now, and there's a lot of criminals in Philadelphia. So
that's a great topic for a show. The criminals in Philadelphia sports right now.
He is a criminal, man, and I was one of the guys. I was a Howie apologist. I was one of those guys that Howie's the wizard. He gets all the trade, and it was really only like a 2-year span there where he was really doing things and. Now we're starting to see him for his true colors. I think everybody's starting to see it with the could have been draft prospects that we've had. The DKs, the Justin Jeffersons of the world, the Jeremy Chins. They're looking at these players and they're thriving. These players aren't just contributing. They're on the. Justin Jefferson is on the borderline of a superstar. DK Metcalf is basically he's already eclipsed 1,000 yards receiving this year. And then, Jeremy Chin he's looking pretty good too whenever he's scoring 2 touchdowns on defense in 1 game. So when you hear those rumors come out that he overruled, everybody to go and draft Jalen Hurts over Chin, to go and draft,
Reagor over Jefferson.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it goes down the line. I'm sure it's happened several times, more than those. So, that guy, he's a snake. And you're starting to see, you're starting to see what Orlando Scandrick was talking about. As much as I hate that, I hate it.
Don't say it. Don't say it.
I don't like Scandrick. I don't like him at all. I think he's still a snake himself. So it's not like I'm out here, Scandrick or anything like that. But just some of the stuff that he said about how he kind of adds up. You have a couple of those guys getting released, and they're saying, "Man, what I saw Sharif Miller's comment, which take that with a grain of salt. You know what I mean? But
I couldn't get on the field, so yeah,
exactly. So that's not even. He doesn't really have a case to make. But one other thing before we let go of the Press Taylor topic, I kind of wanted to see how you felt. There was also rumors about Deuce Staley. I guess out of those two, who would you have preferred? I think Deuce Staley is more qualified, right?
But why? So I'm going to get bashed for this because I'm going to start. I've already kind of started hitting at it on Twitter and on other shows. What has Deuce really done to get the hype that he gets as an assistant coach? I'm going to ask you that because everybody says like he's a head coach in waiting, but yet every offseason, no other teams are asking for interview requests. Like, hey, can we interview your guy for our job or our offensive coordinator? He's been passed over for the offensive coordinator position multiple times here. We don't even have an offensive coordinator, and he wasn't given the role. So what has Deuce really done? Miles Sanders is kind of taken a step back this year, hasn't he?
Yeah, and you have
to look at who's in charge of the running backs.
That's a good point you have there because you actually look at Deuce and you think about what his praise comes from, and it's similar to Doug Peterson on his ability to rally guys, get his running back team ready. Having that it's a community in the running back group, so having those guys knowing when to take one out and put the other in. He has He had those rotations down. I'm not sure if he has that down anymore. It looked a lot better last year, but I get.
He almost strikes me as more of a.
The reason I is, huh?
I would say he strikes me more of a head coach rally guy than an offensive coordinator play calling guy.
I think you're exactly right there, and that's actually a really good point. I guess what I was thinking, and you brought up that Press Taylor's been in the organization since Chip Kelly, so I guess Deuce doesn't even really have the longevity, that Press Taylor might have with the organization. So we got another comment here from Dan Green. When everyone brings up Deuce, I say he's been in a room for years. So what will he really offer? Yeah, it's that right to Phil's point right there. When you think about it that way, who in the organization would you want to call plays at this point?
I have a name, and I know everybody hates the name, and I said it either on one show or on Twitter. So I got bashed for it instantly. But there's a guy, Mr. Marty, sitting up in the booth who has called plays before. He's called plays for a lot of different style offenses, Marty Mornhinweg. We're not trying to win the Super Bowl this year. Well, we always are trying to win the Super Bowl, but we're not going to win the Super Bowl this year. We're just trying to get our team developed and move in the right direction. So Marty Mornhinweg would be my play caller right now.
Yeah, and, we talk about experience. That's probably the guy that has the most right there.
Yep.
And, he's been in and out of the organization
in and out of a lot of organizations. Right. He's not going to win us a Super Bowl as our play caller, but he might at least help get some confidence back in Carson, might actually start getting some confidence in some of these wide receivers by calling the right routes for each receiver. So, that's the guy I go with, Marty. So,
yeah. I mean, out of experience, obviously, Doug it's not working. And I think they're just spinning the wheel at this point, seeing what they can do, which, kind of brings me to the next point. Ownership, Jeffrey Lurie. There's been a lot of rumblings, a lot of rumors. I'm sure you've already touched on them yourself and all about the Birds. But what is he thinking right now? What do you think is his best case scenario right now? Like, would he be happier? Like, does he still want to win the division? Is that a must win right now for him? In reality, I know to the fans you might say that, but in reality, is that what's best for the organization?
That's such a hard question to answer, and we've discussed this on many of shows with you, with All About the Birds. Can you really say you don't want to win?
Yeah, I know.
You have to want to win, but almost you have to go with what I said, where it's not the keys to victory, it's just the keys to success or the game. As long as you see positives, Jeffrey has to see that winning the division, we're not going to win a playoff game. Winning the division is not necessary. You just want to see progress. Jeffrey Lurie is a guy that cares about his trophies. He's got his Oscar on his mantle. He's got his Super Bowl with his billionaire friends. He wants to show as many trophies for anything in the world that he can.
Right.
And so if he has to stay, we need to take a step back this year to take a step forward in the next 2 or 3 years. Because if you really think about it, we have some talent on this team. Yes, we have a lot of holes on this team, but with the right tweaks to this roster, we could be – the rest of the NFC East isn't lighting the world on fire.
Right.
We can really, with a few tweaks, be right back to the division golden child at this point, by next year. So it's not like, it's going to take a complete rebuild or tank for 3 or 4 years to get back to a winning way. So you still have a potential – I almost used the word elite. You have a really good quarterback in Carson Wentz. You have pieces on the line. You got young wide receivers, So Jeffrey probably is willing to accept one back to move 2 forward, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I think that, Dan, with another great point here, the division as a goal, I don't think so. I think if you just fall into the division, fine, whatever. Yeah. If you find yourself winning 2 more games this season and you fall into the division win, whatever. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it, right? You're not going to say, no, we won't play the playoff game. You know what I mean?
I've been the big proponent of saying playoff experience, whether they have a chance or not, is important for Carson Wentz, for George Mailata, for Miles Sanders, Jalen Reagor, the young guys. Playoff experience, even someone like Darius Slay has never played in the playoffs before.
Yeah.
So playoff experience is very, very important.
Very true. And, I guess where I'm at is, if we go into next season and we go into that draft and say we do have a top 10 pick, if we still have Howie Roseman doing the drafting, I'm not going to be very confident anyways. So if that's your plan, you may as well make the playoffs at that point. I mean, the where you're drafting isn't going to make much of a difference if he's always missing anyways. So we'll see how that goes, man. I'm just kind of wondering where Jeffrey's at. Obviously, like you said, you want as many trophies as you can get, but how do you get to the trophy again? What's the fastest path to the trophy again? You know what I mean? So I don't think it's winning the division this year.
I really fear that his love affair with Howie is going to keep he's not going to make any major changes. He's going to be like, fire Jim Schwartz, hire an offensive coordinator, and let's go again next year. No. And that's my fear, and that's not the way it needs to be.
And I hate how Howie is referred to. Everybody says it, and it's obviously the relationship that Jeff and Howie have. Like a father-son relationship.
If you look at it, Andy Reid's end, Chip Kelly's end, and this season where Doug Peterson, it may be his end, who knows? Who's the one common denominator of the last 3 eras of Eagles football? One person, Howie Roseman.
Howie Roseman.
That's not good,
Not good. And, we can bring up all the stats in the world about his drafting. I think it's like 1 in the last however many players he's drafted. Carson Wentz is the only Pro Bowler or something like that. I mean, this it's ridiculous. And, it's crazy that we got lucky the Super Bowl. Not lucky, I won't say that. We had a really good team. It was put together perfectly. And we won the Super Bowl, and it blinded everyone, including the organization, including the fans. And this is where we're at. It's a shit show. And I mean,
that sums it up.
The whole Sunday Night Football thing, you know what I mean, with the Jalen Hurts, the fact that was a conversation that you're leaking information out, I hate that. we are a messy organization right now, and our business is all over the place. It's everywhere. And we look like the Browns, you know what I mean? Like when they were in their dog years, and you know, it's just messy, and that's not what we're known for. We're known to be a pretty well put together organization for the last 20 or so years. And I just don't understand. Jeffrey Lurie has to see the common denominator here. He can't be blind to it. No matter how much. If you love Howie so much, make him a team president or something. You know what I mean?
Here's the thing that really upsets me about Howie. It's I love Lou. I've been pining for Louis Riddick for over a year now.
He makes the most sense.
Yeah, he makes the most sense totally. The problem with Howie, the draft, you can always say everybody missed on DK Metcalf.
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill was a 5th round pick. Okay. Yeah. People miss drafts, and it's easy to look back at drafts in hindsight. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
But the rumors that come out on so many of the draft picks over the last couple of years where this guy and this guy told Howie, no, draft this guy. And now he says, nah, I'll go with the guy I want.
Right.
And then you hear the next draft. Hey, everybody in the room, the scouts and the coaches wanted player X, but Howie went a different way. It just goes to show that Howie has to be the smartest guy. Howie doesn't listen to other people's opinion. Real football. Howie is a businessman, not a football man.
Exactly.
And Howie thinks he's a football man. And that's the problem, because every GM misses draft picks. Every GM can go back in hindsight and say how many people skipped over Tom Brady? You know what I mean? That's the biggest one. You can always do that in every sport. Ryan Howard was a 6th round draft pick. Every sport we can name somebody that was passed over.
Right.
But it's when you're not listening to your smart people in your room because you want to be the smartest. That's the problem, in my opinion.
Right. You're basically, it's funny. It's like a little kid, somebody wants something, so you just don't give it to him. You know what I mean? Like, it's almost like he's just in the room and he's like, no, I'm going to pick this guy, and, screw it if he sucks, but if he's good, I'll be right, compared to everybody. It's just so ridiculous.
Yeah.
And overall, it's childish. You know what I mean?
It really is.
It's so ridiculous. I guess before we move on to the NFL in general, just some matchups we like this week, I do just want to ask you, depending where the pick obviously is, what position or what do you think you would target in that first round? There's so many holes, so I really wanna...
I mean, I would target personally, but I know if Howie's here, he won't. So every mock draft I see has the Eagles in the 6th, 7th, 8th, and they're drafting a wide receiver, which
right.
I mean, yes, we need wide receiver help, obviously. But I obviously would love a linebacker if we're having an early first-round pick. I actually would not be upset with another offensive lineman because we don't know what's going to happen with Brandon Brooks, Lane Johnson, and all these injured guys. Linebacker would be my number one. Safety, you can't run Jalen Mills out there at safety next year. Rodney McLeod is, getting up there in age and all. So I'm looking at linebacker, safety, maybe offensive lineman. They would be in that order. They would be my top three picks there.
Yeah, and see, I said this on Twitter the other day, and I got a little bit of pushback, on the O-line need. There's people out there that don't think we need O-linemen. It's weird to me. How
many times has Carson been sacked and hit this year? That is actually the reason why we don't have deep balls being thrown. You need protection to get a deep pass. You need to make a 7-8 step drop so the wide receiver has time to run down there. So if you can't pass block.
You know what the funniest part is how we, everybody's saying, we don't need offensive line help. We got Brandon Brooks coming back. We got Lane Johnson coming back next year. You got Jordan Mailata. We give, guys like Brandon Brooks and Lane Johnson, who have been constantly injured lately, these breaks, but then we were on Carson's neck. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so weird to me that we cut these breaks for these other guys that are getting injured. They're going to come
on. Carson has played how many games in a row now? He hasn't been hurt in how long, other than getting knocked out by a cheap shot in a playoff game. Okay, exactly. You're bringing up a great point with these guys. There's like a double standard when it comes from Carson to everybody else.
And the crazy thing is Carson's getting hit. I mean, he's getting hit. And
dude is one tough SOB.
Yeah, honestly. Exactly. That's one thing you can't question is the effort. Obviously, his mind has not been there. The play hasn't been, but his effort has been there. He's last week, once again, you see him take off for one of those long scrambles when the offense just can't get anything going. And, it's almost like he just forces his way downfield. You'll see him drop his shoulder, and he's just pushing forward. But, yeah, I thought that was funny because, you look at Brandon Brooks, and don't get this wrong. Brandon Brooks, when he is healthy, is quite honestly maybe, he's a top 2 guard in the league.
Absolutely.
Same with Lane Johnson. He's up there, top 5 right tackles in the league. Maybe top 3, maybe even the best when he's healthy. So you look at those guys, and I get the feeling of comfort, but the fact is Lane Johnson hasn't played a full season the last 4 seasons. Brandon Brooks has had season-ending injuries the last 3 seasons. Yep. So I mean, you can't trust these guys at this point. Lane Johnson had an eerily similar season as far as injuries to Jason Peters' last couple seasons. Mm-hmm. Just in and out of the lineup, in and out of you see him on the sidelines trying to, get his. I'm just sitting there like, let the guy sit out. I mean, we suck. You know what I mean?
I don't want to spend a whole entire show talking offensive line.
Right.
You can also bring up Jason Kelce, who he's still one of the best centers in football, but he's had a really down year. He's talked about retirement how many times?
Right.
The Luke Jarita guy that came in for a few plays a couple games ago, he's not really anything special. Mm-hmm. Everybody says you move Sayamalu to center, maybe that works. Maybe. But then now you lose your left guard. So, you got Mailata, you got maybe Andre Dillard maybe comes back, but there's a lot of issues. Nick Driscoll hasn't shown that much. Nate Pryor, terrible. Opeta hasn't done much. I mean, there's a reason why we've had 11 different offensive lines in 12 games.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, I don't get it. Why people think that the offensive line is, so shored up, and I mean, obviously you can get offensive linemen, and if we're looking for depth pieces and not starting pieces, we can get those in the later rounds for sure. And I'm not arguing with that. But as far as that, if we get a top 10 pick, I'm hoping for a game changer. An explosive playmaker. I thought Reagor was going to be that for us, which he still may be. It's not. We're not ruling him out by any means.
Again, there's no offseason workout. There's no rookie mini camps, no preseason games. He got hurt early in the season. You can't write off Reagor just yet.
Exactly. But obviously the Jamar Chase pick, obviously that's intriguing. Guys like Devontae Smith, Micah Parsons.
That's a name I like a lot.
Yeah, so I mean, you got options there, but I see all these tweets. How he's going to take some unknown guy from the Pac-12. So, and the odds are in that favor. They're in favor of him doing that more so than an SEC. Dynamic wide receiver. Alabama has 2 wide receivers that can go
and probably this year going to the first round.
So, just get one of them. I mean, you got a little bit of choices there. We'll move on now. Let that Eagles depression go. I guess before we move on, do you want to go ahead and make your pick on the game?
I forget what I said on the All About the Birds show. I really do. But it's probably. I think I said 35-16, something like that. They're gonna get smoked. They're gonna get run out. Maybe they get some late garbage time touchdowns or something like that. But it's not going to be a pretty game.
I think people. I think people may be misled, and maybe even myself a little bit, because I do feel and it's huge ifs. That's the problem here. Is I have these huge ifs. If we run the ball a lot, if Carson doesn't turn the ball over, if Slay plays well against Devontae Adams, you know what I mean. So you look at last week, and I know everybody, is kind of feeling like, oh, well, they played the Seahawks well. The defense showed up. Aaron Rodgers is playing. He has that offense moving a lot better than that Seahawks offense right now. And their run game is actually effective. Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams are actually really good running backs. Mm-hmm. And, they got a plethora of options there. I mean, pure speed in Lazard and Valdez Scantling. They have the tight end Tunyon now. So they have options. And I don't want Eagles fans to get confused, get hopes up about this game, because like I said, these are big ifs. And if I'm wrong, if you're wrong, we'll be happy either way. I mean, that's fine. I mean, I'll take a win.
I'm not going to stand here and say, darn, I wasn't right with my blowout for the Packers.
Right, exactly. So
it'll make the post-game show much easier.
Yeah, exactly. And, we'll take the win. But if you're being realistic with yourself, what have the Eagles shown you, specifically offensively? What have they shown us to where we would have any confidence? There's no confidence. It's at a level of 0 for me for that offense. I'm preparing myself for a dreadful Carson Wentz getting pressure the entire game. It's just going to be 3 and outs, maybe a couple turnovers. No ifs, they get smoked. Yeah, that's what we're looking at here. But I guess we'll move on to the NFL matchups. Go over the playoff picture right now. I just have a couple games picked out here that I think will be pretty interesting. There's actually not too many great matchups this week.
When you said you wanted to talk about the NFL matchups, I looked at the whole schedule. I'm like, really? It's a very boring week of NFL games.
And they're not even, there's a couple division matchups, I guess.
Cardinals, Rams.
Yeah.
Broncos.
Cardinals, Rams was the one game that I had on here. Obviously a division matchup. Both teams looking to get a playoff spot right now. That division's really close. And then, of course, I had the Browns versus the Titans. It's going to be a boring game. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to watch it. But it is an interesting matchup. Both teams 8-3. It'll be interesting. Oh, Adam gave us a Birds win.
I think Adam said on the All About the Birds show on Wednesday, I think he said 28-27. So I think he's changing his score here a little bit.
Hey, it's all good. We'll take a Birds win, man. Love the confidence, though.
Yep. All right, so I got some different games that I'm looking at this week. One, it's like one of the most boring games today. But I'm only looking at it because I keep saying the same narrative over and over again. The Jets-Raiders game. Only 2 teams have ever gone 0-16. It is so hard to go 0-16. And the Raiders have been so inconsistent. Is this the week that the Jets get their one win? I at least like them to cover the spread. It's like a 9.5-point line. At least it was a couple days ago.
Yeah.
I got to like the Jets to at least cover the spread. Maybe this is the week that they pull one out. I won't watch that game, but but I'm kind of curious about it because,
that was actually one of my games, that I actually picked as I put in a couple bets last night, right. Of course. That was actually one of my games I put in, for an upset, just in case. It's the odds are heavily in the Raiders' favor. But, the Raiders have played well. They played well this season, kind of inconsistent to an extent. But they're without Josh Jacobs. They don't got their bull back there in the run game. Yep. And you're going to see I think you're going to see some more Derek Carr out there throwing the ball, which the Jets aren't world beaters in their secondary or anything, quite frankly.
Actually, I know nobody likes to talk about fantasy defenses, but in almost every one of my daily fantasy lineups, I've got the Jets defense. Their second cheapest defense. I've picked them because the Raiders with no Josh Jacobs, like you said, Derek Carr might go for 300 yards, but he could easily have a 3-interception, 140-yard game. So that's my little sleeper fantasy defense. That the Jets might put up a good number there, against them.
You never know, yeah. And like we said, you lose a big piece like Josh Jacobs. They actually involve their running back, so
yeah. That's a good rotation too, because I was doing some studying on that game. Like they actually they run Josh Jacobs nonstop for 2 drives. Then they bring in Booker for 1 drive. So every 3rd drive they're rotating. So each running back gets a chance to build some momentum. It's not like one play. It's entire drives. So
it's so simple, but just stuff we don't do.
We're nobodies, and we see it. How do the coaches that are getting paid millions not see it?
It's ridiculous.
It is.
The one final matchup that I actually liked was the San Fran Buffalo matchup, which probably another boring game. It's going to be tough defense. San Fran, is looking all right. You know, they're trying to build their way back up. They're getting a little healthier. Obviously, Jimmy G, you know, isn't there. I don't think he's back just yet. I haven't watched the 49ers.
No, he's not back.
But
you Jimmy G back. That's where my other game, Washington Pittsburgh tomorrow night. Everybody knows I love my Alex Smith. He's my boy.
That's an interesting one.
Pittsburgh did not play well against the Ravens last week.
Yeah.
Full complement of guys going against a riddled Ravens, you know, team. I love that game. I'll watch that game. And, you know, I don't want to root for my divisional rival in Washington. But if the Eagles aren't going to do it, I'm going to cheer for Alex Smith always. His story's inspirational. You know, the guy's one of the most underappreciated quarterbacks out there. You know, I love it. I love watching that game, and I'll be rooting for, you know, the football team tomorrow night. Yeah, Gibson, McLaurin. Yeah, you know, it's good. Yeah.
Yeah, seriously. And, you know, the Washington football team, I mean, they look good. I mean,
that defense is really good.
It looks good compared to the rest of the division.
Okay.
They're literally, you know, and Alex Smith, jury's still out on how good he will be coming back off that injury. Yeah. You know, obviously they haven't put him out there too much, you know, throwing the ball wise. They're giving him some easy, quick decisions there. But, you know, with a guy like Terry McLaurin and you got two running backs in your backfield with McKissick and Gibson. I mean, those guys, you got McKissick in the pass game. Gibson's more of the all-around back. And then, obviously, McLaurin's a star.
Their tight end, Logan Thomas. I mean, he's starting to break out a little bit, you know, so.
Yeah. And then, of course, the defense. You know, you already talked about that defensive line. I mean, it's going to be ridiculous. They're set up for the future. The only thing may be the quarterback, obviously the most important position. But, you know, they can make moves. There's going to be guys available in free agency, stuff like that. They could get a veteran in there. Or if Alex Smith is their guy, you know, we'll see how he finishes out the season if they make the playoffs and stuff. So it'll be interesting. But they definitely look the best. The Giants haven't looked bad. And then, of course, the Cowboys are without, you know, Dak. But they haven't looked very good either way with that defense. So we'll just kind of finish up, you know, going over the playoff picture. I know it's only week 13, so we're not solidifying anything yet. But we'll kind of just see, you know, kind of who's in the hunt and, you know, kind of what it's going to take for each of those teams if they want to get into the playoff, stuff like that. So in the AFC, obviously, you got the Steelers. They're 11-0. You know, good chance. That was actually a great game that you brought up against Washington. Has a very good defense, serviceable offense. You know, they can get the run game going, stuff like that. So they match up with the Steelers decently. You know, the Steelers have a really good team, but they haven't been playing that well lately. Obviously, you got Kansas City at 10-1 with the 2 seed right now. I think KC is probably the best team in football. I think that offense is ridiculous and, you know, unstoppable. I wish, you know, Kansas City fans are so lucky, man. I don't know how they got that lucky. I guess it was years of torment, but you know that oh my goodness, Patrick Mahomes, their weapons. I mean, it's just so. It's such an exciting team. You know, you watch Tyreek Hill in the first half. He has like 200 receiving yards. I mean, that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. You got Tennessee at 8-3. They got the 3 seed right now. Buffalo 8-3. Cleveland 8-3. Miami 7-4 in the playoffs right now as a wild card. Pretty interesting. They got some good stuff going on there with their defense. It's a nice young team. I actually like them a lot. I don't know about, you know, the future, you know, between them and Buffalo as far as who's going to be running that division. We'll see how Tua pans out if he is the star that everybody thinks he is. And then finally, Indianapolis is the final seed there at 7-4 as well. And then you got Las Vegas, Baltimore, and New England in the hunt. So, I mean, you know, Baltimore obviously is the team I would expect to kind of make a late push, but they have been playing really bad. And, you know, obviously they didn't have Lamar Jackson and a plethora of their weapons last week. But they've looked inconsistent all year. And, you know, they have 5 losses. Coming into the season, people were saying that these guys were the best team on paper. You know what I mean? And I thought they were up there, you know, at least a top 3 team. But they have proved that, you know, they can be beaten. And right now they're not even in the playoff picture right now. You know, the Browns and the Steelers are holding that down. So they're what, 2 games behind the Browns right now to get in the playoffs. Do you see them getting in the playoffs?
Lamar Jackson has regressed so much this year, even before COVID and everything else hit. So I'm not buying it. No, like you said, I don't think it even matters who makes the playoffs in the AFC, because it's going to come down to the Chiefs and the Steelers in the AFC title game.
Right.
Maybe Tennessee makes a push, because Tennessee really is a well-run team. You know, you got a solid game manager in Ryan Tannehill, and you know Derrick Henry loves December and January football.
Yeah.
So you know, and their defense is pretty solid. But it's a Chiefs Steelers conference, and like I said, you know, Cleveland, they're 8-3. Does it really matter? You know, the 7-4 teams, they really stand a chance. Buffalo's not ready to compete with the Chiefs yet, so you know, I don't think the Ravens will make the playoffs. But even if they do, it's kind of like in this situation with the Eagles. If they make the playoffs, what does it really do for them?
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
And you know, I guess it similar to the Eagles as well. You know, the Ravens fan may say, you know, get Lamar some playoff experience, get him a playoff win. Maybe
that's the only thing. That's the only thing.
That's the only thing that you could, you know, possibly look forward to. You know, we'll switch over to the NFC. We got New Orleans, the number 1 seed at 9-2. Obviously, they're playing with Taysom Hill. Looks like Drew Brees will be back right in time for us.
Right in time.
He's looking to come off IR next week, so that'll be interesting. Of course, you got Seattle, who just beat us. They're sitting at 8-3. Green Bay 8-3. The New York Giants 4-7. The Rams 7-4. Tampa Bay 7-5. Arizona 6-5. Then you got a plethora of teams down there that are sort of in the hunt. Obviously, Philly, Washington, Dallas only in contention for the division. Yeah. And then you got San Fran, Chicago, and Minnesota sitting there at 5-6. I don't think that those will change too much, aside from maybe Arizona falling out of there. They've slowed down a bit, it seems like. But aside from them, I mean, I think Tampa Bay is going to make it. The Rams are looking to make it. They're another team that could drop down if the Cardinals surge or you know, if Minnesota or San Fran surges. But overall, I don't see it changing too much. And to your point, you know, how much of a difference? I mean, if you look at Arizona at the 7 seed, what they would play the 2 seed, so they would play Seattle. Am I correct there?
I believe so. Yes.
The first round. So Seattle. I mean, the Cardinals can play with Seattle. I mean, so that's not a bad matchup. You would look at Tampa Bay and Green Bay. I believe Tampa Bay is the team that waxed Green Bay earlier this season, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I mean, that's a good.
It goes to the point that I said before the season. I said it like week 4 or 5 when the Eagles we were still talking. Do they have a chance? The NFC, where we just agreed, it's the Chiefs Steelers in the AFC, and they're a class above everybody else. The NFC. Seattle, Green Bay, Arizona, the Rams. There's 5 or 6. Tampa Bay, the Saints. All these teams are pretty close. They can all beat each other on any given Sunday. They're all that closely, you know, rated. It'll be an insanely fun NFC playoffs, because you just don't know who's going to come out of that picture. And they all are really good teams. They're just not at that, you know, next level yet.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess what I would ask you, who do you think is the best team in the NFC right now?
Again, it's hard to say. I mean, based off of the last week or two, I mean, the Packers, maybe, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really that hard to judge. If I had to put my money on one team making the Super Bowl at this moment, it would be the Packers. But that can change tomorrow. If Drew Brees comes back as 100%, it might be them. You know, Tom Brady. I mean, they had a little rough stretch there, but you can never bet against Tom Brady.
Right.
You know, Russell Wilson is an MVP guy. I mean, at this moment, Packers, but tomorrow that could totally change.
Yeah, and that's kind of my thing. You know, I guess I'd probably say the Saints. Their defense has actually looked pretty good this season. Yeah. They got a lockdown corner there in Lattimore, but you know, the jury's out on Drew Brees. He's not playing, you know, phenomenal. I mean, he's not playing. He wasn't playing bad when he was healthy, but he wasn't, Drew Brees MVP status either.
He's become a game manager versus Drew Brees MVP guy.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, as far as the quarterback situation, I think Aaron Rodgers is playing the best football right now.
Absolutely.
And, it seems like he actually has a plethora of weapons around him now. Don't know if that's just the matchups they've had recently. I know they, ran into Jacksonville, a couple of dog teams there. But, Aaron Rodgers looks like he's having fun, and that should be scary for any team. Luckily we get to play him today. But it should be scary for any team that runs.
I'm scared.
Yeah, it is what it is, man. What the hell is it to us anymore? Is there any bets out there that you really are in favor of? I know you do your gambling show on Thursdays.
I put a little. I really slowed down on the betting this the last couple of weeks just because I had a bad run. So right now I'm just putting a little parlay cards out there here and there and all. I did put one parlay card out there for today, and it's got three games and 2 over-unders. So I like the Colts game at -3. I got the Colts at -3, the Rams -2.5, and the Patriots +1.5 on the card. And then I went with the under on the Saints-Falcons game. It was 40. I didn't write it down. I think it was 46.5 or something like that.
Yeah.
And I went with the over, which I know everybody's going to be surprised, the over in the Jets-Raiders game.
That's not a
little fun parlay card. It is what it is. I've had a really bad last 4 or 5 weeks in gambling and fantasy. So the key in fantasy and gambling is not to chase the money. Like, you start losing, don't change what you're doing and don't do extra.
Right.
Step back, slow down a little bit. And it's been a rough season for me. So we're taking a step back right now.
Yeah, man. Speaking of fantasy, I mean, my quarterbacks that I'm putting out there have been killing me, man.
Yeah.
I'm talking single-digit points. And, it started with Carson. Who was he playing? It might have been the Browns or the game before that, where he had single-digit points. So then I switched to Matt Ryan so I could have that, stack with him and Julio. And he comes out and gives me like 5 points.
You say Carson against the Browns killed you. My boy Jason Sullivan, who I do my fantasy and gambling show with, like a few weeks ago, said stack the Raiders against the Browns. And Derek, so I went Carr, Aguilar. I forget who else I stacked. Carr had 4 fantasy points that game. 4. That
was a really bad game for the Raiders.
Yeah. Needless to say, again, I didn't cash that week. It's been a rough year for me.
But I guess we'll get out of here. That's all we got for today, man. Not a crazy day of NFL football. Obviously, I'll be flipping through the red zone, looking for touchdowns for my guys in fantasy. But
I love 4:00 Eagles games. It's a perfect time for a football game,
Yeah, I love it.
It's not too early. Get halftime, get some dinner cooking,
Exactly. And I guess Sundays for me, and especially this year with the way the Eagles have been playing, have been more peaceful when I don't have the Eagles during the day for some reason. Like, I like to watch my fantasy players play. I like to, flip through the channels and check out all the teams. So, whenever the Eagles play at 1, that's usually when all the other games are, and I don't get to see much. And when you give up all the other football games for the Eagles football game, which, I'll do it every time, but don't get me wrong. But
this is the life we've chosen.
Yeah.
It's all worth it, though. When you get one of these shirts, makes it all worth it.
It does. And, until we get the next one, we will continue to reflect back to 2017. That's just the way it is. Everybody does it. Look at the Cowboys.
Absolutely.
So,
throw a little dig in on the Cowboys.
But all right, Phil, man, thank you for coming on the show with me. I appreciate you. Always a good time. Everybody that checked out and gave us some comments, I appreciate you guys. Thanks for viewing. Of course, we'll be back tomorrow. Obviously, Phil will be back later this evening with All About the Birds.
2 more shows to do, halftime and post game. So
yeah, so be sure to check them out, guys. Go give them a follow on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Make sure you're able to see exactly when they go live. And make sure to subscribe to their podcast as well. Always good stuff from my buddies over at All About the Birds. They're doing great things. And of course, be sure to give me a follow, give the sports page a follow at ST Philly Sports 1, and that's on Instagram, Facebook as well as Twitter. And that's going to be it for today's episode. It's always go Birds. I got my Kelly Green on today.
Love it.
I need something. I needed a spark. So give me something today. Give me a 50-yard Rager bomb and we still lose, and I may be genuinely happy. You know what I mean? It's the little things in life at this point. So go Birds, guys. Enjoy the game. Enjoy NFL Sunday, and we will see you soon. Thank you, Phil. Scotty out.
Peace.